Good morning, everyone. Today is a big day in my home country. Today is the day that the United States of America celebrates its 250th birthday. Although most of us already had this history lesson in school, we probably weren't really paying attention as the clock ticked closer to recess or the end of the day. But we can't fully appreciate our freedoms if we don't know how we got them. And more importantly, how close we came to losing them. The story of America's independence is truly fascinating, with more historical twists and turns than we can get into here. Anyway, let's move on to the historical milestones. 250 years ago, on July 4th, 1776, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence, which proclaims the United States of America's independence from Great Britain and its king. The Declaration came 442 days after the first volleys of the American Revolution were fired at Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts, and marked an ideological expansion of the conflict that would eventually encourage France's intervention on behalf of the Patriots. The first major American opposition to British policy came in 1765 after Parliament passed the Stamp Act, a taxation measure to raise revenues for a standing British army in America. Under the banner of no taxation without representation, colonists convened the Stamp Act Congress in October 1765 to vocalize their opposition to the tax. With its enactment in November, most colonists called for a boycott of British goods, and some organized attacks on the custom houses and homes of tax collectors. After months of protest in the colonies, Parliament voted to repeal the Stamp Act in March 1766. Most colonists continued to quietly accept British rule until Parliament enacted the Tea Act in 1773, a bill designed to save the faltering East India Company by greatly lowering its tea tax and granting it a monopoly on the American tea trade. The low tax allowed the East India Company to undercut even tea smuggled into America by Dutch traders, and many colonists viewed the act as another example of taxation tyranny. In response, militant patriots in Massachusetts organized the Boston Tea Party, which saw British tea valued at some 18,000 pounds dumped into Boston Harbor. The British Parliament, outraged by the Boston Tea Party and other blatant acts of destruction of British property, enacted the Coercive Acts, also known as the Intolerable Acts, in 1774. The Coercive Acts closed Boston to merchant shipping, established formal British military rule in Massachusetts, made British officials immune to criminal prosecution in America, and required colonists to quarter British troops. The colonists subsequently called the First Continental Congress to consider a united American resistance to the British. With the other colonies watching intensely, Massachusetts led the resistance to the British, forming a shadow revolutionary government and establishing militias to resist the increasing British military presence across the colony. In April 1775, Thomas Gage, the British governor of Massachusetts, ordered British troops to march to Concord, Massachusetts, where a Patriot arsenal was known to be located. On April 19, 1775, the British regulars encountered a group of American militiamen at Lexington, and the first shots of the American Revolution were fired. Initially, both the Americans and the British saw the conflict as a kind of civil war within the British Empire. To King George III, it was a colonial rebellion, and to the Americans, it was a struggle for their rights as British citizens. However, Parliament remained unwilling to negotiate with the American rebels and instead purchased German missionaries to help the British army crush the rebellion. In response to Britain's continued opposition to reform, the Continental Congress began to pass measures abolishing British authority in the colonies. In January 1776, Thomas Paine published Common Sense, an influential political pamphlet that convincingly argued for American independence, and sold more than 500,000 copies in a few months. In the spring of 1776, support for independence swept the colonies. The Continental Congress called for states to form their own governments, and a 5-man committee was assigned to draft a declaration. The Declaration of Independence was largely the work of Virginian Thomas Jefferson. In justifying American independence, Jefferson drew generously from the political philosophy of John Locke, an advocate of natural rights, and from the work of other English theorists. The first section features the famous lines, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." The second part presents a long list of grievances that provided the rationale for rebellion. On July 2, 1776, the Continental Congress voted to approve a Virginian motion calling for separation from Britain. The dramatic words of this resolution were added to the closing of the Declaration of Independence. 2 days later, on the 4th of July, the Declaration was formally adopted by 12 colonies after minor revision. New York approved it on July 19th, and on August 2nd, the Declaration was signed. The Revolutionary War would last for 5 more years. Yet to come were the Patriot triumphs at Saratoga, the bitter winter at Valley Forge, the intervention of the French, and the final victory at Yorktown in 1781. In 1783, with the signing of the Treaty of Paris with Britain, the United States formally became a free and independent nation. On July 4, 1863, during the American Civil War, the Battle of Helena was fought near Helena, Arkansas. By July 1862, Union forces had captured Helena, Arkansas, and turned it into an important military base. A year later, about 7,500 Confederate soldiers under Lieutenant General Theophilus Holmes launched an attack on the city in an effort to reduce pressure on the Confederate Army defending the siege of Vicksburg in Mississippi. Helena's defenses consisted of roughly 4,100 Union troops commanded by Major General Benjamin Prentiss, who occupied a network of 1 fort and 4 artillery batteries surrounding the city. Confusion over Holmes's orders regarding the timing of the assault led to poor coordination among the Confederate forces. Brigadier General James F. Fagan attacked Battery D without the expected support, while Major General Sterling Price launched his attack against the Union center only after Fagan's assault had already lost momentum. Meanwhile, Confederate cavalry led by Brigadier Generals John S. Marmaduke and Lucius M. Walker failed to coordinate their operations effectively and achieved little. The Confederate offensive was defeated, and on the same day, Vicksburg surrendered to Union forces. Later, Helena served as the staging area for the successful Union campaign that captured Little Rock, Arkansas. On the same day, the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia began its retreat from Gettysburg. After his defeat at the Battle of Gettysburg, Confederate General Robert E. Lee ordered his army to withdraw through Maryland and cross the Potomac River into the safety of Virginia. The pursuing Army of the Potomac, commanded by Major General George G. Meade, was unable to move quickly enough to strike Lee's retreating forces. Confederate troops traveled through difficult terrain and poor weather, with supply wagons stretching 15 to 20 miles. Most of Lee's infantry marched through Fairfield and the Monterey Pass toward Hagerstown, Maryland. Upon reaching the Potomac, they discovered that high water and the destruction of their pontoon bridge prevented an immediate crossing. The Confederates fortified their positions and waited until engineers repaired a bridge and river levels fell. Before Meade could complete a thorough reconnaissance and organize a major assault, Lee's army successfully crossed back into Virginia using forts and the rebuilt bridge. During the retreat, numerous cavalry engagements, raids, and skirmishes took place at Fairfield, Monterey Pass, Smithsburg, Hagerstown, Boonesboro, Funkstown, Williamsport, and Falling Waters. After both armies crossed the Potomac, additional fighting occurred at the Battle of Shepherdstown and the Battle of Manassas Gap in Virginia. These actions brought the Gettysburg Campaign of June and July 1863 to a close. On July 4, 1879, during the Anglo-Zulu War, the Battle of Ulundi became the last battle of the war. The British Army broke the military power of the Zulu Kingdom by defeating the main Zulu army and capturing and burning the royal kraal of Ondini. On July 4, 1910, the Johnson-Jeffries riots occurred throughout the United States after African-American boxer Jack Johnson defeated white boxer James J. Jeffries in a boxing match termed the Fight of the Century. Johnson became the first Black World Heavyweight Boxing Champion in 1908, a historic achievement that also sparked widespread racial hostility among many white boxing fans in the United States. In response, former heavyweight champion James J. Jeffries came out of retirement to challenge Johnson, promoted as the Great White Hope. Jeffries was viewed by many supporters as the boxer who would reclaim the title. Instead, Johnson defeated Jeffries, a result that provoked anger among many white spectators. In the aftermath of the fight, racial violence broke out in several parts of the country, with black people celebrating Johnson's victory becoming targets of attacks by white mobs. And 20 years ago, on July 4, 2006, STS-121 took place when the Space Shuttle Discovery launched on its 32nd spaceflight with a total of 7 crew members going up and the remaining 6 going down. The primary objectives of STS-121 were to evaluate new safety measures and repair procedures developed after the Space Shuttle Columbia disaster, while also delivering supplies, equipment, and Thomas Ryder to the International Space Station. Following 2 weather-related postponements, Space Shuttle Discovery lifted off successfully on the 4th of July in 2006 at 2:37 p.m. EDT, becoming the first and only space shuttle mission ever launched on United States Independence Day. The 13-day mission concluded with a safe landing at the Kennedy Space Center on July 17th. STS-121 was also designated ISS Assembly Mission UALF 1.1 along with STS-114. It served as a return-to-flight mission by testing and validating the safety improvements recommended by the Columbia Accident Investigation Board after the Columbia disaster. The mission's success demonstrated the effectiveness of those challenges and allowed NASA to resume regular space shuttle flights in support of International Space Station assembly. The primary crew of the mission consists of Commander Stephen Lindsay on his 4th spaceflight, Pilot Mark Kelly on his 2nd spaceflight, Mission Specialist 1 Michael E. Fossum on his 1st spaceflight, Mission Specialist 2 Flight Engineer Lisa Nowak on her only spaceflight. In February 2007, Nowak was arrested in Orlando, Florida after confronting and using pepper spray against Colleen Shipman, who was involved in a romantic relationship with astronaut William O'Flynn. O'Flynn had previously been in a relationship with Nowak. She was released on bail and initially pleaded not guilty to charges that included attempted kidnapping, burglary with assault, and battery. NASA later ended Nowak's status as an astronaut. In 2009, she accepted a plea agreement, pleading guilty to felony burglary of a vehicle and misdemeanor battery. She remained a captain in the U.S. Navy until 2010, when a Naval Board of Inquiry unanimously voted to reduce her rank to commander and retire her after 25 years of service under other than honorable conditions. By 2017, reports indicated that she was working in the private sector in my home state of Texas. There was also Mission Specialist 3 Stephanie Wilson on her 1st spaceflight. Wilson made history as the 2nd African-American woman to go into space after Mae Jemison. And Mission Specialist 4 Pierre Sellers on his second space flight. Also, here are the other July 4th holidays besides Independence Day: Alice in Wonderland Day, Filipino-American Friendship Day, Hapa Park Day, Independence from Meat Day, Indivisible Day, International Day of Cooperatives, Invisible Day, Jackfruit Day, National Hillbilly Day, and Philippine Republic Day. So that's all I have for today's topic. I hope you all have a wonderful Independence Day. Hopefully there will be fireworks, cooking food outside, and lots of other fun stuff to celebrate. If you liked the video, please don't forget to leave a comment down in the section below and subscribe for more updates. This is Stephen Luke, and I only have one thing left to say. God bless America, and God bless the American people.